Do you sometimes find yourself talking in professional speak at work? By which I mean in quite a black and white way. Perhaps you have some emotions bubbling beneath the surface, but you keep those at bay. Perhaps you have some hesitations or some doubts, but your speech is quite black and white. It doesn't necessarily demonstrate that nuance. This is a key shift for my leaders often in allowing them to be a lot more authentic and a lot more compassionate and effective in their communication. We talk about saying the stuff that's beneath the surface. If it's that you have to communicate a difficult message for your team and you're feeling really awkward about it because you care so deeply about them and their well-being, then finding a way to voice that can completely transform the conversation. There are some more examples of this in this little snippet with Kate, the final snippet of this series. And I just encourage you, as you're listening to that, to think about some of your communication, perhaps at work, or it could be at home, and where you could enrich it with adding some of this vulnerability and adding some of this nuance, and perhaps therefore actually massively enhancing the impact and the positive outcomes from your communication. So let's dive in. We role model a lot as coaches, the contracting, the live conversation of being able to say, but hold on, I just want to double check. Or have I said, I just want to make sure that that landed correctly, and being able to have a dual level conversation, as I like to say, because I think what happens inside organizations is people feel like they have to talk on one dimension, that they can only talk in professional speak. And the idea of going, oh, actually, I'm slightly worried that what I just said there came across harsher than it was meant to, or that I've offended you. I'm really sorry if I have, not intended, right? That stuff doesn't happen enough. And so many times my clients would tell me, gosh, I was kicking myself because somebody caught me off guard. They made a request. It was just one thing after another. And it just, my response was not the complete response it should have been. I was kicking myself and I regretted it. But the idea of maybe walking back up half an hour later and saying, ooh, didn't love the way I handled that. Do you mind if I just pick up with you again? Because actually, I think it just caught me off guard. That wasn't an option available to them in that moment.
Oh, yay. Wow. I love that. Well, you see, my experience of vulnerable parenting, if we're going to call it that, or humanistic parenting, I don't know. That's not how I was parented, in a very loving home, but nobody came back up to say, oh, I'm sorry how I said that. That to this day doesn't happen, you know? Yeah. Like, so I think it's the modeling all around us. And we were sort of laughing earlier about like the age of us and I'm a child of the 80s. You didn't go and say, oh, I'm sorry if that sounded a bit off. Can I clarify how it landed with you? Said nobody ever.
Yeah.
In Belfast.
But it puts so much pressure on leaders to feel like they've got to land these messages perfectly all the time. And it's like, you don't. You get to check in. You get to say it and go, I just want to check. Has that landed? Like, how does that land with you? What are you taking from that? What doubts do you have? Just allowing people to do more of that. They don't feel like they have to perform so much. They can just iterate. So that's what I find really liberating about this kind of speaking on two levels, not just one. Voicing doubts, that's a massive thing. Is like, how can we really use those doubts in your mind and voice them in ways that actually make your communication stronger?
Because we're applied positive psychologists and coaching psychologists. So that's applied. It's like when I talk about vulnerability, what do I mean? Well, voice your doubts would be what a really crystal clear example. I love it. Okay, cool. So as we draw this to a close, because I know we could talk for hours, and one day we will meet and have that bottle of wine. And is there anything that you haven't said that you would like to say? Question. I'm good at multiple questions, so there's one. And while you're thinking about that, where can people find you? We can put it in the show notes and stuff like that. But just if there's anything you'd like to bring to people's attention.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot there, Kate. So I'm really happy with our conversation, and I'm not burning. I don't have this burning other thing to say. In terms of where you can find me, I guess LinkedIn Maya Goodker, and I'm regularly sharing updates about the podcast there. So you can then subscribe and then you can get that stuff. Or Instagram, I do interact a lot with listeners and stuff on there and share personal and professional updates on there. So that's at Maya Goodker. So it's all very just one word, one name. Come and listen to the podcast if you've enjoyed this conversation. And I do have a few free resources. So I've got a masterclass which goes through these pillars a bit. I also randomly now have created a course about a glucose monitor because I wore a glucose monitor for 4 months recently. And it was, again, I just like to pick up on stuff that I'm experiencing, but also my clients were experiencing. My 40 plus female clients were telling me about weight gain, that they even though the behaviors hadn't changed. And I know weight's always a sensitive subject, but I'm quite happy to say that I was suddenly noticing, despite good behaviors, this was happening. And so I whacked on this monitor, and it's been quite an incredible experience to monitor my blood sugar. So I put together a 1-hour course on that. So that's available. So it's something that was affecting me, but it also holds people back because people want to show up in the workplace and they're telling me, well, actually, this affects the way I put myself forward because I feel my physical impact is altered and things like that. So I've got stuff like that because I always have one foot on well-being. And for me right now, that's my well-being interest. It's kind of saying we've got this incredible technology now for this personalized feedback and stuff. So I've got that stuff as well. So there'll be the core executive coaching, but there'll always be a bit of tangential stuff going on because we're not one-dimensional, are we, Kate? We're multi-dimensional.
No, I know we don't fit. We no longer fit inside one job description. That was then. This is now. I've just absolutely loved this conversation. It's every bit as cool as I hoped it would be. Thank you so much for coming.
I love talking to you, Kate. And you know what? It's just really nice to be able to see you for an hour and a half and connect because we always have a lovely time talking. So thank you so much for having me. So one of my personal missions is to get each and every one of you started towards designing that life of your dreams and taking those first important steps in the direction of your 10-year vision. And so if you've been listening to recent episodes and feel like you do want to get started on this journey, but maybe you've got some ifs and buts, something's holding you back, I've got a really short quiz that might help you identify what's holding you back so that we can address it and hopefully get you started. So if that is of interest to you, just drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'm Maya Goodker there, or send me an email at info@mayagoodker.com and I will send you a link to that quiz. Look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye-bye.